Well, hello, fellow travelers. Hope y'all are doing well. I finally got to visit Gettysburg, Gettysburg National Battlefield Monument today, and it was as special as I thought it would be. We actually took a guided tour. Guided bus tour, and got to learn a lot of things I didn't know. Corrected some things maybe I misunderstood or had wrong, but definitely confirmed that this is the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. Combined total of casualties over 51,000. 23,000, I want to say 23,700 some odd on the Union side, between 23 and 28,000 on the Confederate side. And got to see and look at the ground and the layout where all of this took place, especially Pickett's charge, which was just brutal. And looking at the ground, looking at the layout, and seeing the rolling hills and where commanders thought people were and they weren't, or people thought that artillery had opened up a gap when it hadn't, and just not even really being able to imagine the literal fog of war that was caused by all the musket fire and the cannon fire. Just humbling. That's the only word I can think of right now. Humbling. Humbling in the sense that getting to gain a better understanding of the terrible bravery, the terrible courage that it took for those men to advance against overwhelming, just withering cannon fire, canister fire, and musket fire, and to just keep going as they're being mowed down. And one of in one part of the battle, and I can't remember which one it was, the tour guide told us about it, and I don't remember which one it was, which part it was, but Maryland, you know, Maryland had kind of claimed to be a neutral state, because it was a border state, it was a slave state, but they never seceded from the Union. And at one point, there were Maryland regiments fighting for the North and the South against each other. So a Maryland regiment from the Confederacy and a Maryland regiment from the Union fighting each other, and the color bearers of both of those units were cousins, and they were fighting each other. That kind of sums up the Civil War. And right now I'm just off the battlefield site, and as you can see behind me, I'm at Gettysburg National Cemetery, where the Union dead, many of them, are interred, and over half of them are unknown or unmarked. Well, they're marked, but they're unknown of who they are, and they're just marked with a number, and it just says unknown. Gettysburg and the entire Civil War was ultimately an exercise in futility. It was an exercise in pride on both sides, and it was an exercise that ultimately brought us where we are today. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that the country that we live in, it was forged in fire in the Revolutionary War, but it was forged in an even hotter crucible in the Civil War. In a war where brother and brother fought and killed each other. Cousins, uncles. Yeah, if I haven't mentioned it already, in case you didn't know it, George Washington's wife, Martha Custis, was actually a relative of Robert E. Lee was a descendant of her family. So that tells you how tight it was. But you know, there's all of the stories of the brutality, the bloodshed, the horrors. One of the things they told us today was every public building and some houses in this area were turned into hospitals, and literally battlefield surgery was pretty much amputation. And a lot of times they would just throw the limb out the window of whatever building they're. And they said that there were some places where the stacks of limbs reached up to the second floor windows. That's horrible. But you know what I choose to think about when I think about the Civil War most of the time? It happened right here at Gettysburg. And out in the field at Gettysburg, there was a big white oak tree. They called it the Old White Oak. And at that time, the Confederacy had placed sharpshooters, basically snipers, up into the Old White Oak. And the Union forces were out in the distance behind a ridge, behind a knoll. And they were shooting at each other. The Confederacy was trying to, the Confederate sharpshooters were trying to pick them off, and the Union forces were firing into the tree, hoping they would hit somebody. And this account was written by one of the Union officers that was there. And he said, all of a sudden, we hear someone yell, "Hold your fire, Yanks!" And so we stopped firing, but I ordered my men to stay ready, because I didn't know if it was a rebel trick. So everybody stopped firing. And then a couple minutes later, one person comes down out of that tree, walks about 50 yards towards the Union soldiers, bends down, and lifts up an injured Union soldier and gives him a drink from his canteen. And he stays there with him for a few minutes, letting him drink. This is a rebel sniper, Confederate sniper, that's trying to kill these Union soldiers. Performing this act of mercy. And after a few minutes, excuse me, after a few minutes, he lays the Union soldier back down, and he walks back to the tree, climbs back up into it, and then the Union soldiers hear, "All right, Yanks, put your heads down. We're about to start shooting again." And they commence to try to kill each other again. that is the dichotomy of this war. I actually think of the Civil War as really as the last gentleman's war. And I was actually listening to a book the other day, and they basically said that by the time after Gettysburg, the gentleman's war part of it was over. And it was just kill or be killed. Because there are all these stories of them, you know, meeting in the evenings. Soldiers from both sides meeting and trading coffee for tobacco and sugar, things like that. Then the next day they'd try to kill each other. I think being here, hearing the stories, seeing the land that it happened on, almost being able to hear it happening in my head, it reminds me of the futility that the Civil War was. And it reminds me of the divisions that we have going on right now. The divisions that are, they're real. They're real. They're real instances of one side thinking one way and one side thinking the other way. And I hear people talk about, there's going to be another Civil War. There's going to be another Civil War. And I honestly don't think that if you study the Civil War, that if you visit these places where it happened, I don't think you'd be so all fired ready for it to happen. So, anyway, I'm not trying to get on a soapbox. I'm not saying one side's right or wrong, but I am saying that standing here on ground where over 50,000 men were killed, injured, or went missing, I think there's better things that we can do with our time than to argue amongst each other about some trifling little stuff. I really do. I think it would be better for us to be like that rebel sharpshooter for a minute and pause in our firing and show a little compassion to those that we're trying to wound. Maybe we can do that. So we're breaking out of here, heading to Ohio to spend some time with my grandbabies. So I'll probably see y'all in a couple of days in Nashville, Tennessee. Have a great day, and I'll see you down the road. Bye-bye.